right. So this week in Formula One, we got Drive to Survive season 4 coming out. And for our fans who don't know, as you may have listened to in the trailer, or anyone who's listening rather, I got into Drive to Survive. I started watching that first season, but I was actually watching my first season of Formula One as it was coming out. I was more or less out with some friends in grad school, kind of stumbled home. The race was on. I want to say it was Baku, really late at night. And that's really what got me into Formula One, and watching Drive to Survive got me into Formula One even more. Really not knowing anything, seeing all the drivers' personalities, really trying to hone in on, who's who in the sport. I knew who Lewis Hamilton was. I knew who Verstappen was, but I didn't really, gauge them in anything else besides that. So Drive to Survive has been so impactful in so many ways. I know it's drawn in so many American fans. The hype is real. We fast forward. We got season 4 coming out this week. How pumped are for you? How pumped for this are you, Denz?
I would say that I'm intrigued, honestly, RJ, because it's an interesting season that we've had. I think there's a lot of storylines and undertones and things that will be discussed, and hopefully it gives us an accurate depiction of the way the season played out and gives a fair chance to all parties involved to explain their story.
I completely agree. A neutral viewpoint on anything is what, people who report stories and broadcast them to the world should really be about. That's obviously, what we try to be about here on the DRS zone, even though, we have our own alliances to teams and everything like that, but still trying to be level-headed with our viewpoints. I'm thinking when it comes out, I'm probably just going to skip to the last episode, because that's kind of the one I really want to see depicted the most. Especially with, how everything plays out. It shouldn't be hopefully one of those things like Inception where, you see Leonardo with the thimble at the end. Is it reality? Is it a dream? What's going on? It's open for interpretation, because I think in a lot of fans' minds, whether you root for, Team Red Bull, you're a Lewis Hamilton fan, you're just a Formula One fan in general, the end of last season has to have some sort of asterisk, next to it, just because of all the crazy stuff that went on. So I definitely will be interested to see how it's depicted. I'm also just hoping, regardless of last episode, you learn so many things in Formula One. I just hope they don't try to dramatize it or spice it up in ways that don't need to. There was a report I was hearing that, there's some fake beef being filmed between, I think it was like Sonoda and Saez. I might be even off on that. And it's just like, I love the series. I just hope as it gets more popular and has become more popular, that, that uniqueness to it really stays true. And this year I'm excited, and also in some ways kind of maybe not worried, but also thinking, that might not be the case, but we'll see.
Absolutely. And I think what you said is key. And also they have a duty of care and responsibility with this series to uphold the integrity of the sport, which, after what happened in Abu Dhabi and other series of events, I think has put the sport in a different light. So hopefully, like we've discussed, they're not going to try and manufacture a series just for the sake of entertainment purposes, because Formula One is a sport for the most part, and we don't want it to just become like a circus, or we don't want it to just become portrayed as just a scripted, manipulated formula just because, it sells, tickets, or, it basically puts eyes on TVs. I believe that the sport has enough natural talent, enough kind of interesting and diverse drivers from different backgrounds, and loads of different campaigns happening behind the scenes as well to engage people organically.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's an interesting concept, talking about obviously on a podcast, about other podcasts, but in the United States more recently, a lot of series, for instance, I can think of a bunch on HBO, Bel Air, you also have Succession. A lot of these bigger shows have their own podcasts. And I don't believe Netflix has a Drive to Survive, podcast specifically by people who are there. And I would find that very unique, as a way, hopefully, to explain or break down the episodes, because you have to think of how many hours of footage they have shooting. Even in some ways I'm sure it's extremely difficult, even if you really are trying to give that neutral viewpoint, to really make sure all angles are, accurately depicted in, what is an hour span. So it would be interesting to see what the directors, producers, cameramen, whoever you name it, have to say about that. But I would hopefully see something like that come out, but I'm going to guess it probably won't because it hasn't already, but who knows?
Absolutely, and there's so many different storylines, and also to like piggyback on your point as well.
Mhm.
I think it'd be really good if the Netflix community kind of had a panel of like, avid viewers or fans that could ask questions and also vet the episodes, because we've seen a lot of information being portrayed in a Netflix series, and then the teams come out and, either like clarify whether that's real, whether or not, it's scripted, or whether or not
Mhm.
it's something which was taken out of the context it originally was. And as fans, we want to get closer to the sport. We want more access than ever before. We've come from a period of time under the Bernie Ecclestone reign where there wasn't really much access to the drivers. It was very, very, very this kind of like, here's the fan, here's the driver, and it was almost like a huge no
Black and
man's
white.
land in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kind of watching the sport from like a much longer perspective, it's nice to see them do that, but it also has to be in a way that's in homage to the sport, and really gives us that insight rather than it just being a spectacle.
Yeah, it definitely is nice to get, the all access in a lot of ways and different angles. And one angle I am really interested to see on Drive to Survive, not, angles from drivers, but literally an angle in their car is that crash where Hamilton in some ways almost got decapitated and the halo saves his life. Verstappen's wheels going over it. That one of those more iconic images or crashes you'll, probably remember for forever in Formula One. That's one shot where I'm really interested to see, what the camera work was like, how close of a call it actually was. Because when you see that in live motion, I can only imagine, what it's going to look like. So that will be interesting. Daniel Ricciardo Shui is also an angle I would love to see on the podium there. Don't get me wrong. As an American fan, in Formula One, especially with Drive to Survive, he's really the first character or driver we get exposed to. And I think it's a no-brainer and a genius marketing point, just to have this lovable guy, this Aussie outgoing, rambunctious, also really serious personality to put in front of a camera to promote people who have zero interest in the sport to actually want to learn about it. And that's what got me with the sport in a lot of ways. So shout out to Daniel Ricciardo and Drive to Survive for that fact.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think with Daniel as well, it's interesting because whilst yes, there's like a happy-go-lucky side to him, he's renowned for being the smiling assassin and the honey badger at the same time as well. He didn't have the
Mhm.
easiest of seasons last year, and I think from a fan's point of view, we want to know like how did he deal with the mental aspects of joining another team, maybe not being on the mark straight away. How true are some of the comments about the characteristics of the McLaren? Because we've heard ex-drivers like Carlos Sainz say, oh, the car's weird, eh? And like make almost
Mhm.
references to unique things about that McLaren, and it's always going to be different when you have a driver like Lando Norris, which has been in the team as like a junior driver, had plenty of testing days either with the car on the track or like growing up in the simulator generation, compared to Daniel Ricciardo. And to take your kind of slogans on this, he's like a bit of a Germany man because he's been
Yeah.
in multiple teams, HRT, Toro Rosso, Red Bull, Renault,
Renault.
McLaren, So yeah, it's really interesting, and it'll be very intriguing just to see kind of what was the turning point for him. What specifically is it about the car which hasn't like agreed with his driving style, and what's the relationship between him and Lando as well? Because it's one thing smiling in front of the cameras and having the banter, but is there a sense of, maybe him feeling like the team back Lando more, or the resources more evenly split? Are there
Mhm.
things maybe where like maybe is there things he's learning from Lando? Because, again, Lando's had a quite, I won't say unique career, but he's more conventional in terms of like McLaren's the only team he's driven for. And up until this point, you've seen like a very like good progressive kind of upward curve with his development every single year.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And speaking of, even with teammates being there and everything like that, Carlos Sainz I would love to see where him and Charles, those interactions from this season, because I don't want to say people cast him off last season, but I think the expectation was he was going to be the number two man on that team. And I think in a lot of ways, he proved a lot of people wrong this last year. And even going into this year, is it the year where he kind of slingshots himself ahead and proves the doubters wrong, if you will, in some ways? So a lot of interesting storylines. And even, you think about Drive to Survive season 5, which granted season 4 hasn't come out. Man, I will love to see the backstory on, everything that's going on in the world with Russia and Mazepin and everything like that. Not to bring Rich Energy back into life, obviously, because that's when we first met them too. But there's just so many unique storylines, and I cannot wait to see it unfold. I'm thinking on this podcast, we're definitely gonna have to do a breakdown of our take of some of these episodes, because it's just going to be so much to handle. But even
Exactly,
get people's takes as well. Yeah.
Of course, and there's a lot of things last year which you could delve into, and I hope that the series catches because we've had George Russell getting a promotion, we've had
Mm-hmm.
Valtteri after it's a long time. He's been there since 2017, so was that nearly 4 years? In a manufacturer Mercedes team, being managed by Toto before. Now leaving the stable as such and having to go to a midfield team. How does that play in with him? Lando as well, I think would be an interesting character to follow and kind of see how he dealt, with the highs and lows of the season. Because at the beginning he was on fire, you could really see that he was really pushing to try and be in the top 3 with Lewis, with Verstappen. There's Austria, there's Imola. Even unfortunately Russia, was just nearly moment for him. And we have a British TV series or a British kind of like a televised show every morning called Good Morning Britain, where he
Okay.
comes on quite regularly, and he's talking about mental health, depression, how do
Mm.
you bounce back from things like that too. Even just other drivers that get looked under the radar as well, like Yuki Tsunoda, a driver that's completely from a completely different continent. He's come into like the Red Bull stable. He has traits which are quite typical of a Red Bull driver in terms of his aggressive nature and his fearlessness. But on top of that, there were stories that came out of the AlphaTauri camp that when he came, he was like a bit cheeky. Franz Tost, the team principal, like encouraged him to fly away from England, where he resided for some time,
Yeah.
to Italy, closer to the factory, just so they could keep a much watchful eye for him. And it'd be interesting to see his take, to see whether or not he feels that those adjustments in his life made a difference to him as an athlete, whether or not he's going to change his mentality going forward in the future as well, because he's one of a few drivers that have a high level of penalty points. And with 2 new race directors that are going to scrutinize the sport more because of the disrepute the sport was put under, how is he going to, live in this new ecosystem? Is that style of racing going to be sustainable for him in the future?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's, especially with the penalty points, if you will, I think that's going to really come into play this season at some point. Who obviously knows, when and where. But I think as Formula One fans, I think so much goes on where it's so easy to forget some of these unique things and intricacies. Um, Obviously in the sport. So with the penalty points, or is that even what it's called? Or I'm saying it's wrong, penalty points on the
Yeah, no,
license?
you're correct. Man,
Okay.
have more confidence in yourself, bro. Believe in
I
your
got some
sauce.
confidence. I'm just like, I don't want to box the term, but I was thinking in my head, because again, you're a little more resourceful than I am. I know Verstappen's got a few. Does he have 7, I believe?
Yeah, so as far as
Okay.
I know, Max Verstappen has 7 penalty points and Yuki Tsunoda has 8. So if you hit 12, that's when you get a race ban. And obviously the points last on your license for 12 months. So you've got to do an entire season with that in the back of your mind as well, and when you're in the heat of the moment, we've seen sometimes that drivers can lose their cool. They can
Mhm.
get let down by a performance of their team, a slow pit stop, wrong tire strategy. And when you get into that frame of mind, you almost have to like throw caution to the wind and take risks. But
Mhm.
with the kind of like scrutiny that the sport's going to come under now, under the watchful eye of the viewers and new race directors and the video assistant referee system that we have being implemented too, are you going to get away with stuff like that? And is there going to be a precedent now where drivers like don't go for it as much as we do? And how do you find the balance between letting them race but also like adhering to the rules and obviously not going outside of what is clear and obvious?
Yeah. To quote Cena, wasn't it, if you're a racing driver and go for a gap that no longer exists, you're not really a racing driver in some ways. So I got to imagine, like you said, that's on the back of your head, because so much of Formula One is a split decision reaction. And I got to imagine those racing points in the back of your head, penalty points rather, might just go
Racing,
bye-bye
I
when
love
you're
that.
when you're in the heat of the moment. Speaking of that though, too, with the year coming up, I think we'd be completely remiss if we didn't give, our predictions. And if it's okay with you, starting from bottom of the food chain to top of the food chain here, predictions in terms of where teams end up at the end of the year.
Sure.
So, we got 10 teams in Formula One. Shout out to Andretti for hopefully making it 11 here in the future. We need it. American team in F1, support it. We need it. I just start with number 10 here. I don't know if yours is gonna be any different, but I don't think we can give any increase in ranking to Haas based on last year. So I got them as my 10 spot. I don't know if it's a no-brainer. Do you agree, disagree there?
Fair. I think that's fair because, you've got two aspects of it. One, they've got a kind of internal thing going on with the political situation happening around the world right now and that crisis. I've mentioned in the earlier videos that we've been recording today that I commend Haas for how quickly they reacted to it all. They didn't wait for the FIA or wait for the fans to tell them what to do. They did their own thing to, I think, safeguard
Yes.
Mazepin from a lot of unnecessary attention.
Mhm.
But at the flip side too, then you have to start from scratch. You've got Pietro in there. It might take him a couple of races to adjust to this new formula of car. On the flip side, he's been through F3, he's been through F2. Maybe he's had experience with the 18-inch tire. Maybe that gives him an advantage compared to the other drivers on the grid. But yeah, there's no evidence that we've seen so far that would highlight them in a higher position than anybody else. And it's sad for them in a sense because although we've ranked them so low, we still expect them at some points to get like a breakthrough point.
Yeah. Yeah. Time will tell with that one. I mean, that's the unique part in Formula One, and you think some teams are out there not, but last year seeing Mick battle with Fernando Alonso, that was priceless in a lot of ways. And I think as Formula One fans, seeing something like that, regardless if you like them, don't like them, I think it's just really good for the sport in general. So, the more competitive teams I think we have, that really goes back to the purpose of all these change in regulations. You're never going to expect a team like Haas to catapult in and be in the top three at, in any given race. But if they can find success here or there and be competitive in some ways with, maybe the tail end of the midfield, I think that's a win for Formula One and obviously them. So we'll see. Just above them though, this one I was really teeter-tottering with, but for me, just given last year's success, I'm gonna go with Williams actually in my 9 spot. And it's hard for me to get there because I love Albon. I also know AlphaTauri is Alfa Romeo. Sorry, my bad. Alfa Romeo is there too, but for some reason I like Williams a lot. I just think Latifi's got kind of a curse behind him for the end of last season. Not saying that, anything he did or didn't do was wrong with Abu Dhabi. I just think that carries with him. I love to see Alex Albon be successful. I think he's a great driver. For whatever reason, I think, I can't say 9 without saying 8 with Alfa Romeo. I think they'll end up being a little bit more competitive in some ways, just because I think Vettel's going to be on a send it tour, as I call it, this year. I think he's going to be all gas, no brakes. If there's a gap there, he's going for it. So that's where I got them.
So you got Haas 10th, Williams 9th, and then 8th.
I got Alfa Romeo.
Alfa Romeo. Okay, yeah, fair.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would you say is your 7th choice?
Oh, so this is the hard part here, and don't call me crazy here, because I look at the team's last year's performance and going into this year's performance. It pains me to say it, but I'm actually going to see a fall from grace. I'm throwing Aston Martin down there at 7, just because I think, with their team, going back to 2 years ago, this year we thought they were going to be, a lot better when they're still at the Racing Point and then had the rebranding and they kind of dropped off. I know they're in the rebuilding mode where they want to build a new factory. Lawrence Stroll is talking about, bringing all this money back, that iconic livery with the UK team. I think they had issues last year. Vettel got a podium, which was awesome. I really wish him well. Him getting a win this year would be great for F1, talking about F1 stories again, too. But for me, just between the other teams around them, AlphaTauri, and even if you're looking at too, the likes of Alonso and Ocon at Alpine, I don't really see them beating those teams. So that's where I got them at 7.
Okay.
I guess I'll just run through my list. Honestly, I don't know if yours.
Yeah, like we could do yours, and then I've
okay.
like started to make like a note, so we can compare and contrast.
Perfect. Yeah. So I got them at 7. I'm going to put AlphaTauri down at 6, just because that's kind of where I feel like I like them there. I'm throwing, so this is where things get interesting to me. I think Alpine had a lot of good signs of grace last year. Ocon gets a win. I would love to see Fernando Alonso get a win. Again, something else good for the sport. Not saying all these things are going to happen, but I still think McLaren's at that 4 spot. So I'm gonna throw Alpine at 5, McLaren at 4, and then this is where things for me really get interesting, because I think I've seen a lot of shuffling going on here. I'm gonna start with my 2. Actually, I'm gonna go up to 2, and I'm gonna put Ferrari at 2. And then it goes down to 1 and 3. I'm actually gonna put Red Bull at number 3, and I'm gonna go with Mercedes at 1. And reason being is Red Bull, obviously, last year, I think they put a lot of stuff into last year. And I think with their differences in designs and maybe not having stuff ironed out, again, there's so much secrecy. I think maybe they will struggle with some of the development of this year's car. Again, just a prediction. But for me, last year with Mercedes, they're still the Constructors Champions. They obviously, lost with Lewis in a world title, but I just think they have too much manpower. I don't think they get things wrong. I think they are so selective in what they do. I think they're going to be a team way better equipped to make adjustments when they need to be, where some of these other teams, I think, just are going to struggle with purely manpower and probably not having the wherewithal of knowing really what to do or what not to do when it comes to drivers and experience and everything like that. So definitely some shakedowns from last year. Nothing against Red Bull. I don't think they're going to have like an insane fall from grace. I just think Ferrari is going to be that much more competitive. And I also think just going forward with Red Bull, I think that the penalty points with Verstappen is going to come back to haunt him this year in some ways. And I think, who's their reserve driver that's going to come in. And if Verstappen, does prove again to be maybe a little bit more dangerous behind the wheel. Not saying he is, but he's obviously, an aggressive driver in some ways.
Legoland.
Yeah. Is that gonna come back and haunt him? So that's my breakdown. Agree with it or not, but I'd be curious to hear what you got for yours.
Yeah, I think we're on similar paths, right? Like, honestly, we're almost there. I would have put Haas in 10th place as well, just because I think they're still kind of going through a transitionary phase, as we mentioned as well, with the whole Mazepin situation. And
we're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
And Pietro. Also, they didn't really seem to get much laps in either. So that also is a bit of worrying concern for them. And generally speaking as well, because they finished last year, although they get more time in the wind tunnel, still it's the money which is the issue, and trying to make it sustainable. And, we've seen teams, I think there's a time where Sauber, which is now Alfa Romeo, they're going through like a identity like crisis, or kind of like, funding crisis. And there's a time where the mechanics didn't even have seats to sit on. I'll see if I can send you pictures.
I need that. Oh my gosh.
Money. But yeah, I think there's a lot that lacks to be desired in that situation. I still think that they'll get points because the nature of the cars is so unpredictable. There'll be a crazy race where something happens and maybe some lead drivers get taken out, or something happens and maybe Mick might get a chance to get some points. But yeah, from what we've seen, you can only realistically go with Haas 10th. In 9th, I've also gone for Alfa Romeo. my thinking behind this now is that they also had a lot of technical problems and holdbacks. They were the last team to kind of unveil their car, which is also concerning too as to why it took them so
Hiccups
long.
there.
Also, you've also got to mention that you've got the likes of Guan Yu Zhou, which, he's a very likable character, first Chinese driver on the grid. That's exciting, but, like in terms of developing a car, what can he bring?
Yeah.
Also, you then got to look at Bottas too, because in terms of Bottas, you could say he had the advantage of working for a championship winning team for 4 years, helping them achieve that feat. But, whilst he was there, was he taking notes of what was happening? Was he like trying to get a deeper understanding of technical regulations and how they work and play out to bring to Alfa Romeo? I'm not sure. And, evidence of that also is quite apparent in qualifying, where you see him go with quite an aggressive setup for quali, but then that car is not conducive to race conditions and you will see him struggle to manage the tires. These are
Great
all
points.
things which, if you're going to go to a midfield team, you might struggle or you might find yourself in more harm than good. So, as much as I do love the merch, by the way, they got some saucy merch. The camo, like,
Yeah, can't even see the car.
exactly, you thought the car was John Cena.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta edit that music in here.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully you don't get copyrighted. But
Yeah. No infringement intended ever.
Exactly. So so just above them now in eighth, I've got Williams, because I think for them, there is more pressure on them. They've been, there or thereabouts. You've seen a trajectory now with even Latifi being able to match his name, George Russell,
Yep.
in a race a bit
Saturday
more closer.
George.
Exactly, the boy, the wonder kid. And even Albon, it's pivotal for him that he proves that he deserves a second chance in Formula One, because whilst the Red Bull system can be quite harsh, and whilst I think, he wasn't probably given as long of a chance as he should, on the flip side, you could say that Perez made a better opportunity with that car than what Albon did. And ultimately, it's going to be key for Albon, because I think, funny story as well, George Russell begged Williams and made a lot of PowerPoint presentations for them to take Albon on. So,
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
because they're quite close friends off the circuit too, and used to
Yeah.
share like a motorhome and stuff like that in their junior careers. So, again, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them, and also just Dalton Capital, because again, Williams were sold on to this finance company. They had the entire of last year to kind of get to grips where it is to run a Formula One team, how much it cost, injecting this new money into the team before the cost caps, so. And also just the car as well looks different, the front nose philosophy, the barge boards, the rear wing kind of characteristics. So yeah, two drivers which want to prove something, and on top of that, new owners, new investment. This is what they wanted, like a fresh, clean slate to be on equal platforming to everyone else. I'm sure it won't be equal, but it should be closer. So yeah, I'd like to see Williams eighth. Moving up, I'm then going to say Alpine, because I know you've touched on, for the good of the sport, you could say that you'd want like the elder statesman like Fernando to be in championship winning,
At least a
machinery.
podium.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
and you got a podium last year too, so you showed that it's not impossible for him to do. But at the same time, with Alpine, I do worry, because they're the only Renault Alpine power team. We've seen that on the last day of testing, L plan went from L plan to L retirement plan as
To a hard L. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Fernando had to take a very early shower that day with the reliability issues. And again, they've also lost Otmar Savnauer as the team principal. So they've got a new German guy as well. I think it's Mike something. I'm not going to try and say his last name because I'll probably butcher it. But again, will the with that, if you're going to do something like that now, is it the best time? Because, if you're going into a new regulation, you're going to want some sort of continuity. For them to get rid of my, Otmar Savnauer right at that time. Oh, actually, no. What am I saying? So they got rid of Alan Prost, and Otmar Savnauer is coming into Alpine. So again, how long is it going to take him to, adapt from Aston Martin into Alpine, and
Yeah.
also kind of like what structural things is he going to bring to the team that's going to give them an advantage that they didn't already have. So that's key. And I think also the issue with Alpine is, like I mentioned earlier, you don't have a sister team, or you don't have like another customer team that you can get information from, or Delta, or any kind of comparison. So it's a sticky one for them. And although like it's intriguing as well because they've got the BWT sponsor, so we might have a pink car for a couple of races too.
I love it. The Pepto-Bismol ride.
Exactly. A bit of
Baskin
candy
Robbins for my
floss.
American friends.
But yeah, just like how will they invest that money? Will it literally help them? Because if you get rid of someone like Alan Prost, which has all the technical experience, and he also understands
Great
how
mind in the
drivers
sport.
work. Yeah. Exactly, a legend in the sport, pretty much. How do you subsidize that? So yeah, Alpine 7th. 6th, I'm gonna say AlphaTauri. I think that for them, if they can get 6th in the constructors, that's a pretty mean feat, considering all the other teams are practically manufacturers, or actual like car makers.
Yep.
I'm expecting to see Pierre fight for his career, because like I think that he's kind of like working up a plan to leave the Red Bull Academy, or like franchise. And if he can put together another great season and prove that that he can do it, and he can drive in all sorts of conditions and kind of like regulation shakeups, he's going to put himself in a nice shop window for the likes of a Mercedes, if Lewis decides to retire at the end of the contract next year, or if Mr. Honey Badger doesn't perform at McLaren, and Zach Brown gives him the bear hug of death out of the team.
Suffocates him.
Exactly. So, and then also on the flip side for Yuki too, he is good, and I really feel sorry for him, because he I don't think he deserves that level of scrutiny people put him under, but he will be heavily scrutinized now that he's one of the only 2 rookies that will be driving from last year now into this season. We've seen a lot of raw speed, raw talent, of course.
Yeah.
But like Honda don't really have a say as much as they did with the Red Bull family previously, because they were supplying the engines, and now they're just kind of like they're shadowing everything that's going on. So there's no obligation for Red Bull, I think, to keep him as part of that package there if he underperforms. And he has to learn, because you thought he would have learned last year. You would have thought that the penalty points we mentioned as well be like incentive. But again, sometimes, as Martin Brund always says, great line, ambition before adhesion, and sometimes your ambition like supersedes like, being able to make things stick and being able to make something sustainable for such a period of time. So them 6th, Aston Martin 5th. I'm gonna try and give Aston Martin a bit of bail, because again, they've also had a huge investment from Aramco. They've also talked about the long-term plan, as well as building a completely new factory from like scratch, like trying to basically recruit people from different teams that have had success, like Red Bull, like Mercedes. They already have like a kind of relationship with Mercedes, as you could see, I think, that day when Toto went to the court hearing, when the teams were told about the findings of the FIA report, the sum of what had come to light so far. Lance Stroll was there too. Not Lance Stroll, sorry. Lawrence Stroll was there.
Lawrence Stroll, yeah.
And, for him to kind of be so close with Toto and just trying to kind of keep on the good side of him means that there must be some sort of technical kind of partnership that they have. You had the pink Mercedes a couple of years too. And although that's not going to be applicable to this year, because everyone's starting from scratch, they must understand fundamentally what it is to like basically copy a championship winning car. So they've got a lot of new theories, and that's why I kind of put them almost close to AlphaTauri in terms of you're shadowing a works team, and you're going to be having a lot of investment and kind of things that you want to build for the future too. And Seb is no slouch. Whilst I think that he's not performing maybe to the best of his level as he was in his Red Bull days, he's got a lot of experience, and you heard that in his Ferrari days, giving almost actually driving the car and also being on the pit wall, telling the strategy guys how to run the strategy.
Yeah.
And also Lance too. I think Lance will be looking for his first win, because Ocon's done it. Pierre Gasly's done it. Like, to be fair, Sainz has come close, Leclerc has already done it. Like, he's in that generation of drivers too, where he'll be looking for that first win. So, I think there's no better year to do that than next year. So I think that's why I've got Aston probably fifth.
Okay.
Fourth, and this is where it gets tasty now. Red Bull.
Oh,
I think
holy shish kebab.
the Holy Energy Drinks Company, they're going to be under a lot of pressure. They've got a technical investment from Oracle, which is good for them. They've also, as we spoke about in the previous recording, they've invested in Max with this new bumper contract.
Yeah.
But the car, if the rumors are to believe that it's overweight, that they also have a really radical car. Yeah, of course. It didn't have its Red Bull on time. That's why.
It's a literal porpoise. It's not porpoising. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, the biggest thing with Red Bull is, did they make the right call developing the RB16B to fight for that championship as much as they should? Because it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can only do so much. And they spent a lot of their resources last year taking it to Mercedes and trying to get that championship. So are they going to be on the back foot now in terms of the technical side of things? Will they be able to outdevelop themselves out of it as the years go by, or as the months go by even? Also, will the tires play a factor into it too? Because you've got a driver there like Sergio Perez, which can do quite cool things with tire wear and tire management. But if this is like a new formula where we're going to believe that it's like a 100% sprint for 50 or 60 laps, where does Perez's traits come into it? And also, is he going to be able to play the support role to Max that Red Bull are going to be looking for? Because we saw glimpses of it in Turkey, in Abu Dhabi as well. But for a driver of his experience, one of the more experienced drivers on the grid, people will expect more. So, and also for Max too, is he going to be incentivized by the new contract, by the number one on the car, asterisks, and those things? Or is it going to be a thing where if they don't give him a car, he's just going to say, well, mate, this is what you have. This is what I'm going to do with it. I'm not going to kill myself. I've been in this sport since I was 17 years old. I'm not going to stress myself any further or give myself gray hairs if you don't work with me to give me what I want. So
yeah, great point there. And now we got the final three
top
here.
three, so the podium runners and riders. So in third place, I've got McLaren. Again, I am going to shoot them some bail because I was sitting down there looking at divisions of McLaren where they aim to be, and for them, they also shouldn't really get that much bail. At the beginning of the hybrid era, they wanted to go on this very experimental hippie trip of trying different engine manufacturers. I think they're the only manufacturer, the only manufacturer where they've had Merc engines, Renault engines, Honda engines. And at some point, you have to look at yourself, and look within to try and change that, So there's a lot of fundamental stuff there. I think they've got a great team principal in terms of Andreas Seidel. I think they've got a great CEO in terms of Zach Brown, who has very high expectations and
100%.
knows racing. Another thing that maybe we should plug on the DRS channel one day is Zach Brown's garage. It's nuts the amount of cars that guy owns.
That would definitely be its own episode. That would be sweet.
But to bring it back to championship expectations, there's no reason why McLaren shouldn't be pushing to be at the top there. They've got the Mercedes power unit in the back, and also they've got their own people as well that should be able to push the team further and kind of help Daniel and help Lando as well synergize and make the team better. So just on a consistency point of view, if they can be consistent, then I think they won't be too far off. So third place for them, which now leaves the top two. So when I reveal this, it will kind of reveal the other. I'm going to say second place for Ferrari. I think that their car, being the radicalist, if cars were supposed to perform as good as they look, I think arguably they might actually have something there, and it's the most radical car in the grid. It's got a really different design philosophy, really different front nose, really different side pods, different kind of air cooling ducts. And usually the sign with that is either it's genius, and it's Albert Einstein level kind of groundbreaking stuff,
Yeah.
or it could be a complete flop, or it just might be the thing where
Frankenstein.
exactly, But again, with Ferrari, they have no excuse, and the likes of Matteo Bonotto are going to be under immense amounts of pressure to try and make the performance gap, to challenge for a title. I can't remember the last race Ferrari won in terms of like two years. Like I'm trying to think of any like race wins they got. They've been close, but they've never really challenged for a title since that whole like engine debacle. So
Yeah.
again,
Charles was the last one.
exactly, So I think for them, they'll try and obviously uplift themselves there, immense pressure on the more senior parts of the team. But yeah, I think even if they have the car, probably what would stop them from winning the championship sometimes is the lack of consistency from Leclerc as well. And I think Leclerc needs to pull his socks up too. And he'll be under pressure as well, if the car is a championship winning car, to stop making those mistakes he made in Monaco or other places too, where they had like a lack of correlation between that and the tires. So, that kind of brings me on to the last team and Mercedes. I think that, the time that they spent, away, kind of like, just being in their own kind of like silence, just like, reviewing maybe some of the mistakes that they made last year too, because they were not perfect either, but they showed that they could understand the car and make it stronger as the season progressed. I think is key, and I think it's not only just a case of them as a manufacturer, but you've got two drivers with very good technical insight from different perspectives. Russell from a new school of like sim driving as well, and being in the simulator, and like being very vocal as well. He's a very articulate lad. He knows how to get his points across.
Yeah.
And then also Lewis is a championship winning driver, the most successful driver on the grid, and he knows what ingredients make a championship winning car. So yeah, I think with Mercedes as well, they'll be definitely up there. I think that they will win another championship. And to all the naysayers out there that give them a lot of flack, I would invite them to try and actually give Mercedes credit, because it's not easy to be dominant in a sport for such a long period of time. And even with just the micro kind of like changes that the FIA made throughout 2014 to 2021, they won all 8 constructors.
Yeah.
So
That's a
yeah.
great point. And to quote Tom Brady, one of his famous lines is always, his favorite ring is the next one. And that's when he talks about his Super Bowls, and you get that GOAT status, where a lot of people do consider Lewis Hamilton to be the GOAT. And in my opinion, I would love to see, assuming our predictions are roughly accurate, let's assume Mercedes does win, and Lewis's mind is this world championship, if he does win, his most important one, the one that he thinks that he deserves the most. And I think in some people's eyes and mine personally, looking back, if he were to win, I think it probably would be, at least in my life from when I've started watching him. So
it would be one of the greatest stories, right? Because honestly, he was basically the mission was, you win 4 races, you win the championship. And had it not been for the FIA's intervention on the last dying laps of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, he'd be an 8-time world champion, So that must play in his mind. And I don't think it's a case that he has anything to prove to people, but he's an out and out racer. He loves competition. I think the fresh blood of having Russell inside there as well is going to push him to think about things from a different perspective, to open his eyes and his mind to kind of like see things in a different way, and to continue to reinvent himself, which I think is the way you stay at the top. You sustain a level, and that's probably the difference, I think, with him, unlike the likes of a Sebastian Vettel, in my opinion.
Yeah, all great points. If anyone else out there has their predictions, obviously let us know. We're just two friends from across the pond. We have our own opinions and everything like that, but love to hear what you guys have to think. If you do have any, things you want us to talk about on the podcast, let us know. Interact with us, at _ the DRS zone. Shoot us a DM, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys back here again next week with our next episode.
Absolutely. And another point I'll caveat to RJ's points as well is keep an eye out for the Twitter spaces as well. Because guys, like, it's so awesome when we have this great community of people to come in. I think that great shout out to Arden as well. We've created a safe space for people to come from all different teams, to talk how they feel, in a respectful environment. And by all means, don't feel shy. If you ever see us running those spaces, feel free and obligated to join in, and to talk, because, like RJ, I think he's guilty sometimes of saying, Denzel's got technical insight, or he's been watching the sport longer. But at the end of the day, we teach each other. Everybody's learning something every single day. And I learn stuff from RJ. I learn stuff from all the people within our friendship group. And you never stop learning, So absolutely, feel free to join in. Feel free to, like, to correct us. Feel free to kind of like, talk your thing, as we would say in London, and yeah, we're looking forward to it. There's a lot to look forward to with Bahrain. I'm sure next week we'll probably bring an episode out on the testing. We'll probably bring out like maybe last episode kind of review of DTS. So yeah, there's so much to look forward to, and we would love you guys to feel part of that kind of movie as well.
Yeah, exactly. Anything just we can to interact with people. That's the whole point of everything. There's no point in enjoying a sport if you can't enjoy it with others. The interaction truly is what I think makes Formula One so great. There's so many fans that just know so much stuff, the ins and outs, everything in between, the good, the bad, and the Mazepin, the ugly. So we'll look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Take it easy, guys. Safe.
Peace.